So I just wanted to make this quick video to show you how you can create professional looking HTML and PDF versions of your Jupyter notebooks. Now it takes quite a bit of work, and there are two ways that I'm going to show you, but there's a few things that you need to install, a few things that you have to check out. Now remember, you're probably going to run into errors. That is part and parcel of coding. You have to be able to tinker, become comfortable with the uncomfortable. But let me show you, one way to go about it, and you'll have to try that on your own system. I think it's worthwhile because, as I say, you can really publish some great looking HTML or PDF versions of your Jupyter notebooks. So here I am in my Visual Studio Code. I've opened a Jupyter notebook. We can see it's called sets.ipynb. And what I would like to do is either export this as an HTML file or a PDF file. How would I go about that? Now there's a couple of things that I really have to take note of. The first thing is that I am running a Python kernel. So if you look at the top right here, you can see I'm running a Conda environment, and that is different from what you might see as a virtual environment. Please watch the videos on how to set up Python inside of Visual Studio Code. In those videos, I show you how to set up mini Conda and create Conda environments. Otherwise, I'm going to assume that you do have a virtual environment, such that on the left-hand side here, under your folder name, you would see .venv, that's your virtual environment. So either of those would work. I am running a Conda environment. So what I really want to do is hold down Shift-Command-P, and I'm going to open this terminal. But it needs to be a Python terminal, so I'm going to say Python:\terminal. If it's not in your recently used section up at the top, search for that. I've recently used it, so it's going to be at the top for me. So let's create that. And now you can see I am inside of a base environment. So that's just going to be the Python that's installed on my system. So that's certainly not what I want. If you are running a virtual environment, hopefully here you'll see .venv. But since I'm using a Conda environment, I need to activate that environment myself. So I'm going to say Conda activate. And now I've got to put the name of this virtual environment, which is right up there. It's mathematics_python 3_13. So I'm going to say mathematics_python 3_13. And now we can see on the left-hand side, instead of venv, I'm now in this Conda environment. That's absolutely fine. And in here, I need to install my conversion software. And that's called NBCONVERT. Now, if you are using a virtual environment, you would say pip install. But since I am in a Conda environment, I'll say Conda install. So please bear in mind which one you're using. And then I'll just say NBCONVERT. So that stands for Notebook Convert. That's going to be the package that allows me to convert my notebook into an HTML file or a PDF file. So I'm not going to run that because I've already installed that, but remember that has to be inside of this virtual environment of yours, whether you're using .venv, that built-in virtual environment, or a Conda environment. I'm just going to close my terminal there because we need to look at a couple of other things. So I've opened a browser and I've searched for NBCONVERT, the NBCONVERT package, and we can see I'm looking at NBCONVERT 7.16.6, the documentation for that. And you can see how it would work once you've set it up. There is what you would have to type inside of a Python terminal, inside of Visual Studio Code. So Jupyter space NBCONVERT and then --2 and then space and then the format that you would like and then the name of your Python notebook. And here they've just used the generic notebook.ipynb. Is this going to work? Well, it really depends. It's not that easy. If we scroll down, so instead of this format, you have to actually type in the format that you want. You can see all the formats that you can do: HTML, LaTeX, PDF, Web PDF, Markdown, etc. So let's have a look at the section on HTML. So that will be --2 and then space HTML. That's what's going to go in there. Instead of format, you're just going to put HTML. And that's going to work pretty much out the box. It's very easy to convert to HTML. The other versions are a bit more difficult. Here we see we can also export to a LaTeX document or LaTeX document, depending on how you want to pronounce that, and that's going to be --2 LaTeX. Now to do that, you have to have a couple of things installed on your system. If you scroll down, we can see there one of the things that you might need is Pandoc. And I've opened Pandoc here. You can just search for that on your favorite search engine. and there's a download the latest installer. You can see there's separate information for Windows, for Mac OS, and for Linux, but those would be, if you want more advanced setup. So I'm just going to click on the download the latest installer, and as you scroll down, you can see all these versions. .deb, that's Debian, that'd be for Linux. .pkg, that'll be for Mac OS. So as we can see there, either you have an ARM64 for the ARM64 kernel, as we can see there, and then there's some Linux and there's some Windows versions. You'll have to choose the one that is appropriate for you. Right at the bottom, we see this for older Macs with Intel-based CPUs as well. So definitely you'll have to install that. Other things that you might need on your system is the following. If you're using Windows, you would have to install a Tech version. So there's Tech Live on Windows. You can certainly search for that. Click on the Easy Install and you can download an installer. If you're using a Mac, the one that you want is Mac Tech. So you can also search on your favorite search engine for Mac Tech, and there is a download page. So look at that Pandoc as well as some installation of Tech. Now Tech is about mathematical typesetting, but also all sorts of other typesetting. And if we go back to NBCONVERT, we'll see that these things are absolutely necessary. If you're going to do PDF, it's going to be --2 PDF, and that's usually going to run into problems. While it's easy enough to download and install Pandoc and Tech, either the Windows Tech Live or the Mac Tech, there's some couple of hidden settings that are sometimes difficult to learn about. You'll have to look at the error message that you get, and you've got to Google that or use AI just to find out what other settings you might need to change. And that's really going to depend on your system. It really differs from system to system. Then there's also --2 web PDF. Now what that is going to do, it's going to use your browser and it's going to convert to LaTeX and then to PDF, which is what happens when you export to PDF as well. It's going to go via LaTeX. Now to do that, you need some parts of a browser engine, and the browser engine that is used is Chromium. Now Chromium is open source web browser developed by Google, but it is the open source part that is used by many other companies. For instance, Microsoft Edge is built on top of Chromium. Now, headless means you're just downloading the parts that you need, and so you won't have the Chromium browser to use. You'll just have the parts that we need. So you need to install that as well. And you can see here, if you are installing NBCONVERT, you'll have to put these square brackets following NBCONVERT web PDF. Now, what that's trying to tell us, the easiest way to get PDFs is just to export to HTML. That's just a normal web page. Open that in your favorite web browser and say File, Print, and print that web page to a PDF. That is really the easiest workaround. As you can hear from all these installations that you have to go through, exporting to PDF can be very, very difficult. So that's how to do this in using NBCONVERT. But there's another way, and that is to use Quarto. Now, Quarto, as you can see here, that's supported by Posit. That's the company that brings us Positron, the newest IDE for R. And remember, it's Python and R. Even the company that brings us R is now heavily leaning on developing for Python as well. So Quarto is a document management system. It produces very nice professional looking documents using your code, and that code can be Python and it can be R and some other languages as well. And here you see an example of this. Here's a Jupyter notebook, and when it's exported, here it's exported to an HTML file, and you can see how nicely that renders. So you've got to really become familiar with the Quarto system. You can read up here on the Quarto website. There are just so many things that you can bring into your notebook. You can see VS Code, Jupyter, Positron, RStudio, NeoVim. You can use Quarto in so many of your integrated development environments. And that includes Jupyter notebooks, which are what we use for our purposes inside our Visual Studio Code. If we go to PDF Basics, you'll see in the first cell in your Jupyter notebook, it'll have to be a markdown cell, and you'll have to tell Quarto that this Jupyter notebook of yours is ready to be converted, not using NBCONVERT, but using Quarto. And so this is called YAML, YAML, that stands for just another markup language. And there are so many settings that you can go through, but this is going to control how Quarto would render your Jupyter Notebook to create an HTML version or PDF version. Here you can see they've chosen PDF. So if you export this, it's going to be PDF. Now there's a couple of things you need to do here as well. When you have Tech or MacTech installed on your system, you will also have to say Quarto install TinyTech inside of the same terminal I showed you before inside of Visual Studio Code. That's not going to work though, because you still need to install Quarto on your system. So let's have a look at that. Here we have Quarto CLI, the command line interface. Once again, search on your favorite search engine for Quarto CLI, and you can come here to the download page and select what you want to install, Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. So that's the command line interface. You'll have to download and install that. That's not enough. When we go back to Visual Studio Code and we come to the left-hand panel here and we click on extensions, you will have to search for the Quarto extension. And if you scroll down here, you'll see that I already have that extension installed. So you'll have to install that extension from Quarto, which is supported by the people that brought us R&R Studio, the company now called Posit. So quite a few things for you to go through. So when you've installed the CLI and you've installed the Quarto extension, you'll have to open a terminal once again in Visual Studio Code, and you'll have to type this, Quarto install TinyTech. So do that as well. So now we are back in Visual Studio Code, and I'm going to show you then what we would do to create HTML documents using either NBCONVERT or Quarto. So I'm going to hold down Shift Command P, and I'm going to create a Python terminal. Once again, I'm not using a virtual environment, so we can see I'm in my base Python, which is not what I want to use. So I'm just going to activate my virtual environment, and that's my Conda environment. So I've activated this environment, and what I would now have to type is Jupyter So I'm typing Jupyter NBCONVERT --2 space HTML, and now this name of my notebook, sets.ipynb. And that's going to convert for me to HTML. Once I've got that HTML, I will open that in my favorite browser, and in my browser I will say File, Print, like you would, print to a printer. But in your printer dialog, please select PDF instead of your physical printer. And that will render a PDF for you. That is just the easiest for you to do. If everything was set up correctly, you should be able to say --2 PDF sets.ipynb. But then you got to cross your fingers and hope that all the settings on your computer are correct. It's going to give you some error messages. You can try and read those, copy and paste them into ChatGPT or Claude, and try and fix the problem yourself. It's really going to be individual to your own computer. It's a really difficult problem to solve. So that's one way. The other way then would be to say Quarto render, and then just to say sets.ipynb. Now, it's not going to work for this notebook of mine, because as you can see right at the top, there is no section with HTML. I've got to have that first markdown cell with the YAML in it to tell Quarto how to render this document. So let me open another notebook that I have here. It's called Quarto test.ipynb, and let's look at the top. This is what the first cell looks like. It's a markdown cell, and you can see I have some YAML in there. YAML starts with a --, and it ends with the same thing. Here's a couple of things. I've got title, and that's the title of my page. I've got an author, cross-reference. I'm setting that to true, and I'm setting a list of figures. I'm creating a title for that. Please look at the Quarto documentation. There is so much you can put in here. You can have pages and pages long of just these instructions. My format is HTML. I'm going to use a theme, Sandstone. Now I'm going to warn you, this doesn't always work in Visual Studio Code. It does not always recognize these themes, and it's just going to go to the default theme. And that's a bit of a problem. I want a table of content. I want to go up to section 2 as the depth of my table of content. I want my numbered sections to be false. I want code folding to be true. You can look up all these things, and I want self-contained to be true. And I'm telling Quarto that I'm using Jupyter, and I'm using Python 3 inside of Jupyter. So this is needed when you want to say what we're doing here at the bottom, Quarto render sets.ipynb. It's going to need that. So remember, you need the CLI, the command line interface, and you do need the extension right here, the Quarto extension. Otherwise, none of this is going to work. So do remember then, if you're using your virtual environment, use pip install NBCONVERT. If you're using Conda, use Conda install NBCONVERT. And again, I'm crossing my fingers and I'm hoping that this works for you. It is a bit of a pain, but you can control exactly how you want your document to look. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to open this HTML file and show you how, what this would look like once I've rendered it. And here you can see the rendered page. On the top right, I see a table of content. That's very nice. I see the author there. I see the name, Hello Quarto. As I said, this is the code folding part. So you can see right there, I have to click on that little expansion button there to see the code. Otherwise, the code is going to be hidden, which is very nice. And look at this. For demonstration of a line plot on a polar axis, see figure 1. When I hover over that figure 1 appears there. But we can also see figure 1 here. And we see that it has a caption there, a line plot on polar axis. I coded that. I have my equation 1 here. You can see the 1. And I can see the reference to that equation. And when I hover over that, it's going to appear on the screen as well. And again, if I want to see the code as to how this plot was rendered, I can just do the drop down and there's the code for me. So this is an HTML file beautifully rendered without any problems. Once again, if I wanted to print this as a PDF, I would go File, Print, and here I'll just choose PDF instead of my default printer. So good luck with all of this. You can really create some very interesting, professional looking documents that you can share with your colleagues